Hello, hello, hello. All right. So, um, I had a long think about the database structure, and I decided to go with a database structure which I have in another project. With some slight improvements, hopefully. Which is that so this is what I have in another project, where I have the base table. This mindset is to encourage append-only design as much as possible. So I have the base table, which has, say, information. Second. Making sure I got everything I need. So I have this model in another project, which I quite like a lot, where I have the base table, which has all of the immutable characteristics of a item. Usually this is where I'll also do the joins and things like this, but it's all the immutable characteristics of an item. And then I have the versions version, which has the mutable characteristics of the item. And we keep track of the sequence, so we know the order. I mean, we could also do it with some sort of like created at, recorded at, in reverse. But we keep the sequence there. So this has all of the mutable characteristics. And this was the model I was contemplating doing yesterday, why I was pausing so much. But the problem with this model is it's not entirely good for indexing. And the reason why I say that is because what you want to index is the latest version of something. So what I did is I added a new table, the index table. And the way that this will work is it will basically it'll be the index of my index. Is a bit weird to say. It feels a bit hacky, but I don't think it is. Because it's kind of like a snapshot for event sourcing, but basically it's the latest job version for a job. So I can index it, and I can use this in my queries to search for this, and it'll be atomically kept in sync with the latest job version with triggers. We'll have these triggers down here, so it'll stay up to date with the latest job version. So this will be append only. This will be append only. This will be update and append, obviously, but primarily functionally update, so it stays up to date. So, like I said, this is more like the snapshot or the of the latest version. And then I will be able to do efficient indexes on it. So I can index like normal and have really efficient queries. So that's the mindset. And this is never the source of truth. It's really an index of I can index the index. It sounds weird to say, but that's the model I'm going with. And yeah, so I think this is going to work because it means that now I keep all history. I keep a record of all history, which is what was tripping me up so much yesterday. And I can also index it as fast as possible. And I mostly just went around and I just cleaned things up and got things, where I wanted them to be. And yeah. So let's see how we can make this all work. Um, need to find my place and remember what it is I want to focus on next. Well, I'm not doing American English. Okay, right. And so just to remind ourselves where we're at, it's mostly working on seeing what we can do about making these scan jobs work. So that when we trigger a scan, it will spin off loads of jobs. Um, okay. So where did we get up to? We have some basic tests where we can. I moved over, tidied things up and moved it to testify, so it's a bit easier to read and to write and get better logs when something fails. We prove that we can put a job onto the queue and then get its state. And then we can prove after we've put a job onto the queue that it can be claimed and picked up. So I think the next thing is we're going to have to probably handle the ability for a job to be listed as completed. And whether a job can be retried, I think. So we're going to have to start with what this would even look like. So let's say func test store mark completed and retry. So let's say we have two jobs. Two things we wish to enqueue. let's say we'll have job done, and then we'll have job retry. Yeah, and we'll enqueue that. I have this helper function here. I can just reuse. Then we'll say send welcome message. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing with claim due. Sure. Oops. We don't really care how many things it claims. That we'll just trust that it's claimed it. Not really the purpose of the test. So we're going to need some new logic here to mark a job as completed. So probably, we have the job ID here, job done. So we'll probably have something where we say store.mark completed. Sure. And then we should check the status to actually see if it is actually being completed. And then we will want to do a similar test with job retry. So something similar like job, no error, store.mark retry. Job retry. And this is going to be our goal for getting these two things working at the least today. Similar logic. I'm trying to think how the actual logic would work for retry. Because it would need to error. which means if it's errored, but it's not being picked up again, then the state would go back to pending. So what we would want to know is if it's returned to pending, I think. Which means we need a way of making this error. Let's come back to the actual logic here. I think we're going to comment this out for a second. And we're going to see if we can get mark completed to work first. And then we're going to see the exact, we'll think more in detail of the exact syntax, what we want to do for mark retry. But what we're going to need is, this needs to fail, so it retries and re-enters a pending state. Something like that. Well, I guess actually no, that's sorry. This needs to mark. Sorry, this needs to mark a job as retrying at a specific. My IDE is frozen. I need to restart it. Oh. This needs to mark a job as retrying at a specific point in time. Sorry, that's because we're not actually going to be handling the thing that causes the retry. We're just going to say you need to retry. That's what we're going to do. Okay, let's come back anyway. Okay. So we're going to need store mark completed at the very least. Keep this test aside so we can easily reference it. So at the very least, what we're going to need is every job will have an outcome. So every job will have an outcome. And as part of the outcome, we need to record the result, which I don't know if we'll use a generic here or if we're just going to say it's JSON encoded. Let's keep it JSON encoded for now. I might not even use JSON in the actual database system in the end, because I don't think I actually ever plan to do introspection on the payload at all. So maybe that I use a another binary serializable format. Because I think it only makes sense to use JSON if you can do introspection on the JSON. But so they'll all have a status. Status is the terminal status. I think we kept the named const in named types in the domain. So that might be a mistake I might change because I don't like all of these strings. So I might pull out the named types into the DTO. But for now, I think only strings are in the DTO. So this could be completed, retryable, and I think it was failed, if I recall correctly. Every job could have an error in its outputs. Now, I don't know if that would be stored as a JSON, an error, or just a pure string. So we'll have to think about that a bit more. But let's keep it as a string for now, because that's going to be the most flexible thing to work with. And if a job has failed and is capable of being retried, it would have a date in the outcome to record the next time to run the job at, I think. Next scheduled at time. Is when a retriable job next becomes eligible to be ran. To be run. It doesn't like me saying ran, does it? Is the results not, I don't like the word result because we say result here, is the say result. Outcome is the resolved result of one finished attempt. We should now add this to our pre-touch. I'm gonna actually have to give these JSON tags probably. For now, let's not worry about it. Let's prioritize on getting it working because I don't even know if these are the data structures I even want to keep. So So we want to get the job index. So it's probably something more like this, I guess. I think we just need to, yeah, okay. Get job index. And we want the priority. Or I have the schema up on the side. Priority scheduled at attempt. Yeah, and we're gonna have to now wire this in with the store. Once I've gotten things working Vesculite, I'm gonna have to rethink this whole store setup because I don't like it very much at all. So I tidied this up when I redid the databases too. We're gonna want new methods for what we're doing here. We're also gonna have to add it to the ports as well. Put it here. There's not a lot of room. That's all here. So we're implementing mark completed here because we're talking to the store directly rather than through a shared interface layer, which I'm gonna have to set up. So what did I do? I did job ID. Yeah, sorry, I have to queries. Um, I'm really gonna. I really should put the. Oh no, this is right. I was thinking for a second I don't have access to the enums, but yes, of course I do. Did I not get? Oh, oh, because I did. many, and it should be exec. Something still wrong? Sorry, I'm just blanking. Of course, it's oops, it's one. So what do you return? So you can just pass it in directly. So mark completed. It's gonna want the result, isn't it? Because if I'm marking something as completed, it has a result. Which means we have to pass something in here. Nil. Do that for now. So we only wanted this to return an error. So I'm gonna have to do this conversion. Um, obviously this could be a nil. I don't know if this would protect me against. This would store an empty string, wouldn't it? If this was nil or had no items. I'm just thinking if nil should be preserved. Because it is optional, so it could be nil. Because if we want to preserve nil, Would need and then this would preserve nil. So it doesn't force it to become a string. And then it makes it so I know if it was a nil to begin with. Um, and then we would want to have another function for mark retry, same concept. So hold on, did I just seeing if the test now passes for mark completed? Now why is that happening? I don't speak Russian, unfortunately. Also, now I'm no longer in focus. I'm in focus again. I still don't speak Russian. Microservices. What am I working on? I'm working on my framework for Golang. So, long story short, it helps you create Vue websites in similar to Vue.js. Create Golang websites similar to Vue.js, but instead of the JavaScript script block, it's a Golang script block. And this open source. Pico sh/Pico. So we need mark. So hold on, we have an error here. Is it because I'm trying to create a second version and it doesn't like that? Because presumably this works. No, it doesn't. That's interesting. Oh, yeah, of course. I see the problem. For some reason, I put ID as a string. So mark complete works. So now we want mark retry. Um, I'll update these comments in a second just to make it obvious that I didn't do it. Just do this and then I'll come back to it. So if something's been marked to retry, you don't have a result, I guess. And if it's retry, it becomes pending. We won't have a result. We'll have an error. Which would have to be passed in. We'd also have an attempt. Attempt. Yeah, an attempt. And a time for it to run at. Didn't I create a helper function for formatting? I think I did. I think I did, didn't I? Yes, I did. Um, if last error is an empty string, we should probably not persist in the database. Rather than maintaining the empty string. I'll come back to this also. Because I'm not sure if this is how I want to handle it. Which means let's try implementing this. Let's say attempt 1. We're going to need a time in the future. This is the internal clock. So it will say it runs in and now in the future, but it actually runs instantly. I realize you can do this now in Golang with sync tests, but I've just not spent the time to do it. So we'll say it's a transient boom. And then let's validate that this error message is there. I also haven't spent the time to look into whether or not the internal sync test actually does everything that my clock package does. In my experience with standard lib, is I love using standard lib as much as possible, but when they release something that like you have implemented, there's inevitably going to be some migration period to fully adopt standard lib, because obviously it won't have one-to-one functions that you came up with. And let's reclaim the job. Because we want to prove that it won't be claimed yet, because we haven't ticked the clock forward yet. So we want to validate that it hasn't been picked up, because it will be for the future. That works. Okay. So now we are able to mark a job as being completed or mark a job as being set up to be retried. At some point, we're actually going to have to get into actually doing jobs. So if we're going to have mark completed, we're going to need mark failed. Um, and we do have to remember to add this to our ports. So let me do that while I remember, because otherwise I will forget. Because the idea is that we do have to route this through the actual port system in the future. I'm going to have to think more about this. Comments. So there'll be mark retry. What did I put for the... I didn't do. Okay. There was job ID. Um, okay. Job ID. Attempt. Run. So like I said, I'm going to need to mark a failed job. And see, I'm wondering with completed if we should use the outcome. Because completed and failed are both terminal states. Thing is that obviously completed would only ever use this one. would be because I think the only thing you'd actually pass through is the error message, wouldn't you? Maybe the outcome object wasn't that useful. So, one of the reasons why we did all this work with restructuring the database was to prove that we could keep track of the full history of the database. So if we enqueue a few things, mark things as completed, look at the results and mess around with things a bit, we should be able to prove that we are knowledgeable of the full history, which is the whole reason why we did all this. So it's all auditable. So let's be a bit more clear with our numbering so we can keep track of it ourselves if there is errors. So we'll say send welcome again. Then we're going to claim it. Where did I get wrong here? Oh yeah, no new variables left. So let's try giving this a result this time because we've actually technically only tested it with giving it a, a bogus. I'm still not sure if I actually want to use JSON as my final intended data structure inside the database because the main reason why you would keep it as JSON is if you wanted to do introspection on it, like query over it. Databases support that. But I might just choose a binary format just to keep it as lightweight as possible and be as lightweight to decode and encode. The main reason against that would be the fact that if it's a binary format, it's not as easy to look at the database in order to diagnose issues. However, in saying that, it is my intention to have an interface to diagnose the system anyway. So, yeah. So it'll be pending, running, pending. Oh, so we just want to populate this with a load of nonsense and just prove that we are able to actually keep track of the whole history. This is really important. Helps if I can type. No, this is completely wrong. I'm going to be looking at the sequence. So this proving that everything happens in order and that there's no surprises with how we process things. Okay. Let's see what happens first. Well, that's not good, but that's not what the error is. What have I done wrong? I have the error in this file. Alright, we have an interface issue. Did I give you a different... Is that not the same? Mark completed. Tud. Tud. Completed. Mark completes. Well, hold on. Tud. I think this is an actual issue with the thing now. Let's see how far we get. Test is failing. I have to use the debugger. This mark completed is failing. Prove. I don't think that updating. Oh yeah, well, yeah, that okay. That's probably okay, that works. So hold on, what was I trying to do here? Gonna use the debugger. I see. Oh yeah. Oh sorry. It's a complete flow. That's right. So it's enqueued, claimed, completed. Yeah. Yeah, because that's what we're doing before. Okay. Okay. Now let's having difficulties. Expected running actual enqueued. This isn't the order this would be in, so I'm going to just put this in order. What have I done wrong? That would be what I've done wrong. Okay. So we're able to prove that we've kept the full history of the items in the store. So my change to make it a bit more event sourcing It's successful. So we don't have data loss. So that makes me happy. So let's think what's next. I'm feeling a bit confident now because I feel like we're starting to get the right data structure, which is obviously the fundamentals of everything. I think we're going to have to get to the point where we actually start talking about registering workers. Have a look at the music first. See what interesting stuff I can pick. Okay. Hey, Alan, how are you doing? Did you break your computer trying to run my code? We were almost done with the new website. Um and so we still got some final changes to the homepage. And I'm hoping that it demonstrates the power of the framework. One of the things we've been able to do is to run the templating inside of WebAssembly, and so you can have the live updates in the browser to actually try things like the Go Playground. But actually, try the templating in your browser without actually installing or downloading anything. It's not perfect though, but it hopefully allows us to show like examples of the system working. Um, so we're continuing with yeah, exactly. So we're continuing with the worker system. Um, the main thing is I redid the database setup, so I'm quite happy there. And we're about to get stuck into, I think, actually registering workers, which is obviously the basis of actually doing anything. um, I've gone for like this type of event sourcing. It's like a poor man's event sourcing database, if that makes sense, where we store all of the jobs in a root table immutably, and then we store all of the versions, all of the mutable data in its own table, so that data is actually immutable. And then for fast indexing, I created an index table. So it's a bit um, unconventional, but it's a combination of trying to make it so you don't lose data in any situation, but so you have a complete audit trail, but you don't lose out on the capabilities of being able to index the database quickly. So that was mostly what I was working on yesterday. And now we're just trying to get stuck into seeing if we can actually make this functional. So, how are we going to tackle this? We probably want to try and see if we can create a new test scenario to begin with, so we know what it is we're going to be achieving. Yeah, it's like I said, it's unconventional. So I'll explain it a bit more. So I have a similar database setup for this in another project I have. And the reasoning fundamentally is I don't like the update command in SQL. I've always hated the update command in SQL. It's just a personal hatred I have of the update command. And there's several reasons why I hate the update command. Not all of them make a lot of sense in this situation, but one reason is that obviously the update command deletes data inherently, right? Because you're wiping the previous data that was there. And the other reason why I hate the update command is because if you want to use an OLAP database, so for example, BigQuery or ClickHouse or an analytics-based database, they don't like update commands. They're not designed around update commands. And like if you want to use Parquet files, they're not designed around the concept of data updating. Now, to be fair, ClickHouse handles it better than other similar databases, but I just don't like updates in databases. It just feels slow, aggressive, and just not ideal. Now, the normal philosophy of how to handle this is event sourcing, right? So, in traditional event sourcing, in proper event sourcing, you store the deltas of what changes on each update. And then you can replay the event store to rebuild what the database actually is, if that makes sense. And then what you tend to do with event sourcing is because that is a slow process, rebuilding your data based on replaying data, it's a slow process. You tend to create another table which is known as a snapshot table. So you gain the benefits of being able to query quickly and then keep the whole history. The thing is I don't like traditional event sourcing. Every company I've ever worked at that's tried a traditional event sourcing has failed. Now, I don't know if that's a criticism of event sourcing, a criticism of the people I've worked with, or what the criticism is, but it's complicated because it's a different way to view your database. So, my method is this weird mutant mix where it's not really event sourcing because I'm storing all of the changes, not just the deltas. But my index table is kind of like a snapshot table from event sourcing. So it's a bit confusing. So basically I have a root table, which is the pure immutable characteristics of an entry. So, for example, let's say you were a user. Your immutable characteristics is your user ID, right? Your name is not immutable, if that makes sense. Your name is a mutable characteristic. And also your name is personally identifiable information. And so because of that, you don't want that immutable because of GDPR. People may want to do, may want to have that information expunged from your system. So for a user, your immutable data is probably, your ID, and also when your user was first created. And probably for a user, that's all of your immutable data, if that makes sense. And then what I do for mutable data is I create another table which I call underscore versions, and it stores in an append only log, so you can't update these tables. And I enforce that. I literally enforce that, so you literally can't update. I have a trigger, so you literally can't update these tables. Unless it's a GDPR where I'm gonna have to go around the trigger. But basically, I store the mutable data as a log, you could say, of updates. So because of that, I have a full, complete history of every previous version of the job. The problem with this is there's no easy and efficient and cheap way in most database engines to just get the latest version of a job, if that makes sense. What I mean by that is you can't easily index, like say, I want an index of every job where their latest version is them running. So to counter that, you could call it a hack, you could call it a snapshot table if you want to sound professional, but I have a mutable table, which is just the job index. Yeah, so it took me, I was thinking about it for quite some time. But yeah, I have a mutable table, which is the index, which only contains the latest and up-to-date mutable information, and it just helps make, and then I put the database indexes on the index table. So it's unconventional. I know it's not a normal approach to databases, but it's mostly out of my pure hatred of update in databases. I don't like losing data. And if I do want to lose data, I want it to be through a retention policy of cleaning up old data. So it could be that, for example, I decide that I want to have, a job which removes old versions of jobs which, are more than 6 months old. But that would be based on a retention policy which could be specific to the user. That makes sense. And so that would tie into the compliance requirements that each user would have. So some companies may not want to delete any data less than 2 years old or less than 1 year old, right? It depends on, for some people, if they just want their database to be as small as possible, they may just make the retention 1 week. And the reason for that is because you may only want this data for debugging rather than for audit purposes with your compliance officers. So it's unconventional. You have 3 tables instead of 1. But the only downside with this method is I do duplicate data in the database. So this database design would consume more disk storage. And the other downside of this approach is that your database caches, depending on how you've set up your database, it will cache the pages which are most frequently accessed. and it may mean your database ends up wanting to have more things in cache, basically. But generally speaking, I prioritize observability and debuggability over storage space in a database. Yeah. So basically, it's all to say I want the best of all worlds. Anyway, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. So I think what we're going to do now is probably going to be one of the largest leaps in work, because what we're going to have to actually make we're going to have to actually build the worker system, I think. So we can actually hand off these jobs to something to process them. So I think the core thing about these tests is we're going to actually have to test through the ports in the domain and ultimately create a full flow test. So I'm thinking the actual test is probably going to be very simple. It might even be conceptually the simplest test we have so far. But then building the plumbing behind it, we probably don't even have time to do today. But that's not to say we won't try. So we're going to enqueue a run. And we're just going to wait to see if it completes. So it's just going to be a simple test. So enqueue runs to completion. So just like how we had a helper here for creating a new store, we're going to need a helper for creating a new runner. And then we're going to want to have a worker which is registered. we're going to have a worker which is registered into the runner's service. So we're going to need a way of creating a runner here. Sorry, way of creating a worker here. Now, workers would have their own type. Because they'll want to have their own. We would want this to be type safe. So let's say it has user ID. Sure, we'll JSON it. And this will define the kind of job it is. Let's make this the send welcome we keep adding in our tests. Then we'll need a worker for this. I'm gonna have to actually think through what the DX should be here. Like, how should this be exposed to the what would be the most intuitive way to use this? So we'd have there would be the job, right? And then this would be the args. So it's all nice and typed. Worker domain. No, yeah. So this is obviously wrong because I'm importing an internal, and this is meant to be what the developer who's using the framework writes. So what I will need is I will need to put this through the facade, the WDK. So this is wrong. But for now I don't have it available there. Oops. For now I don't have it available there. So we'll just point directly to domain, to internal. But this will have to go through the facade once we've actually written it up. Let's just add the args. So I'm going to need a way of accessing the args of a job. Args. Perfect. Okay. So this will be the actual worker which the developer defines, and this will be the arguments that the job can have, and it's all typed. Which means, so like I said, we'll need the new runner function made. But then I would be able to access the worker. And then same thing again. We should probably go through the WDK here. But then we would need a way of registering the and I'm wondering if this needs to be typed. But there would need to be a way of registering the worker into the run service. So this would... The registering wouldn't return an error, but then after registering all of your services, you'd have to start the runner. So it would be something like run.start. Obviously, give it context. Don't know if it makes sense to give the register a context. Failed to start runner. So this would register a worker to listen on the runner for jobs which match its kind. And then we're going to have to put we're going to have to do all this stuff here to actually put a job onto it. But we don't want to expose the store to the user, because that would be an internal concept. And if the user wants to interface with it, the only thing that they would be doing is swapping out adapters, I think. So we basically need to do the same logic here, but instead of store, you would be just hitting the facade to enqueue. But I don't have that written up yet. So there's a lot of things to think through, and I think we're going to start with just this here. And obviously this. So, because we're going to have to write a lot of stuff here to get this to work. Because this is really an end-to-end test, I think. It might be I need to create another simpler test and isolate a smaller piece of functionality first. Because after this, all I want to do probably is just check that the status of the last job is completed. Let's see what we can do with just this to begin with. So we have new store here. So we would need a new runner. This would return some sort of runner service. I think I'm going to get stuck into the code without coming up with this entirely yet. Because I'm realizing just how much structure we're probably going to have to write before we really want to dive into our first test here. Let's go with more lo-fi now. Different brain juices required. So this is the store interface. I'm going to need a dispatcher. Which can dispatch and it would dispatch a job record. To an appropriate registered worker for its kind. And then we're going to need a way to wait, because we're going to need this in the test. We're going to need a way to wait for jobs to actually be completed. So we're going to want a job state waiter. Wait for terminal, so waits to completion, but completion implies positivity. How my statuses are. So wait till the job is terminal. And for this, you would give it a job ID, so it knows what you want to wait on. And it would cursor keeps jumping down. My cursor keeps. And it would return the state once it's finished. Job state and error. Handler which oh, I have to rename this better. My cursor keeps jumping down. That sounds. So if we're going to wait for the job to be done, we're going to need a new file for our handler logic. My cursor is jumping. I don't understand why. Cursor keeps jumping. Never seen that before. Do I have a key pressed? Oh, that's interesting. When I press control, it jumps. Is that a feature or? I don't understand. I feel like I've never seen that before. Okay. Oops. Because this will give us the ability to wait until the job has been picked up and done in our test. Now, why are you unhappy? Hold on. This is completely the wrong data structure. Okay. Again. Oh, I. Is it just because I'm pressing Control S? I swear to God, I've never had. That's weird. So I'm instinctively doing Control S, and for some reason, when I do Control, it's just jumping the cursor to a random place. I don't think I've ever seen JetBrains do that, but whatever. So ID is the job rows ID is the jobs ID. ID. I worry about commenting these out. Commenting these in the future. Just think about this more. Obviously, we'll need a structure. So it's not going to be claim due. Do I have any nice sentinels? Error service closed. Ay, ay, ay. What is going on with JetBrain? I do Command V to paste, and it does the jumping thing. Right click paste. I don't know. Gonna have to open up JetBrains again or something. Have I like enabled a mode by accident that I don't understand? I don't know. H dot wait wait for terminal. Yeah, we'll fix the comments. Oh, we can put one in. Yeah, I used to have a habit back in the day of using Vim and other such tools. I had this like really complicated plugin setup back in like I think it was probably like 2018, which it made into like this really complicated terminal and all of this. And I was really happy with it. And it sounds silly, but I just moved to a new computer and I just couldn't be bothered to set it up again. um, I think I tried to copy over the config files and they like glitched out. And then I was just like, fuck this. The main reason why I like IntelliJ, well, the IDEA products, is I just find the debugger so nice. That's personally why I like them. It's the debug is so nice. And ultimately I guess I could open them only when I need the debugger, but I just get addicted to it. As simple as that. Still not sure why it just like jumps my character when I press control though, but whatever. Okay. So what we will need now is our dispatcher, which is the actual thing that dispatches the yeah. The dispatcher dispatches a job to a worker, right? To the right worker for it. What I'm thinking of is, do I need a pool? So I could have a pool of jobs to be drained and picked up. And then the dispatcher goes over the pool. So a pool would be for a specific store. And then it would have channels so you can um, basically listen to them and we're going to probably want our clock package so we can make this testable. A pool would need a configuration. And a pool will listen to specific cues. So notify wakes. And then we can use this to manage things like concurrency. Um, handle back off, jittering, concurrency limits. It's basically going to be the fundamental structure which manages how the work is actually distributed to the dispatcher. So or maybe this is like a pooled dispatcher. So it is a type of dispatcher. So we a pool might manage the like a global concurrency limit for the whole pool. We're going to think about this a bit more. So, obviously, we're going to need a structure for creating a pool. Trying to figure out how this the hierarchy of things should be. I think what I need to start doing is I need to figure out how this marries to the dispatcher. Um, I'm thinking that the inbuilt dispatcher is basically a pooled dispatcher. So and that the pool isn't something that the dispatcher um embeds, or the other way around. Which would obviously mean that if that's the case, then we may want to change it from being pool. I don't know, maybe it should be pool dispatcher. But then it would have a dispatch command on it. Yeah, a dispatch method. Um, Job record. Which means we'd need to start by looking up the actual things in. Would it need a registry of sorts? So we can look up in that registry this kind, right? This record kind, and find the return. Sentinel still have not registered. Perfect. So we need a registry. That might be the fundamental goal. See if we can get a registry working. That might be our next fundamental goal. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily require much. I guess this really should be a port. It should be a port. It's weird. It like shoved my code down there. I don't know what's going on. which means the pool needs access to the registry. What did I do? Oh, yeah. There will be a way to. This needs to handle errors. Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Hold on. Hold on, what have I done here? This needs to be some sort of function that I return to be able to handle it. Yeah, because this is going to have to. Yeah. This is going to have to return a function. So I have a higher order function. I think I just need to create my registry set up and then get that fully tested. Yeah, that's correct. I need to change that. You have to give it a version. So I apologize. I need to update that. Yeah, so you can install it with the make command, but if you want to install it like that, you have to give it a version rather than at latest. And the reasoning is I thought at latest would give it the latest version. It doesn't. The reason is because when I do my CI/CD, it's kind of hacky. Go doesn't like me doing it the way I'm doing it because in my code base, I have all of these like basically Go modules are very difficult. Go workspaces are very difficult to use properly. You could run the CLI. So yeah, the way that I do it is so you did like inside the folder you did make install CLI, is that correct? Or you just probably built it yourself. That's also fine. If you just did go build that's all make installed CLI does actually, I think. Just to go build onto the CLI folder. And then you can just do pico new. and it will ask you for the name of your project. This can be whatever you want it to be, right? My Pico app. Maybe I should probably go back to the screen. My Pico app. And they will ask you if you want to create it in a new folder or your current folder. Most of the time, you want it to be in the new folder. The Go module path is obviously if you want to use it, on GitHub. That probably works. I don't run it like that, but that probably works fine. If that's perfect, that's good then. And then you give it Go module path, and then it will ask you these questions here on if you want to set it up with the experimental interpreted mode or not. I will give you a strong caveat. I don't know the current state. If you've cloned master, then it probably works. I think for the latest release, it doesn't work. Because I fixed some things currently on master. So you can select... all the AI agent integration does is it installs a skill.md file to teach whatever model you have a little bit about how the framework works. But I always started with struct validation and Sonic, and experimental mode is the thing that I'm currently getting to work. And if you continue from there, then you should be able to go into that folder. By default, when you clone it like this, it's going to go to the Go packages and get the latest version of all the dependencies in the Go mod. If I go into the cat Go mod, you'll see that for the releases here, is pointing to Alpha 24. If you've cloned it like you did, you're going to get some updated stuff. And obviously, you might want to use a replace. Do I not have a replace here? Where am I? You might want to use a replace to the local thing in the Go mod to use the latest stuff if you want to try out interpreted mode. It's just because I've been working on making interpreted mode more stable. But you're right, I need better instructions on how to do the Go install there. I'm gonna load up I can paste it in. And then, as it suggested after you ran the install, it tells you, you can run the generator main Go all. And the way that Eco works, when you run the generator, it will put all of the generated files in a folder called dist. And so this is where all of your Go code lives. And the reason why I do this instead of, say, using Go generate is because you can plug in adapters, obviously, into Pico. It's meant to be very modular and, with the adapters you can plug in. And so the way that I see it is you can basically extend the behavior of the generator, which is why the generator has its own main.go, if that makes sense. So I realize it may be a bit convoluted, but it has a purpose. So the generator main.go has is the actual thing which is ran to generate the Go files, and then the main is the one that actually runs it for your development or production environment. And they both depend on a file called pico.go under internal, which basically just configures all of the standard adapters to begin with. So if you asked it to start with Sonic, you'll see that there's an adapter here for Sonic to be the JSON provider, because Sonic is a lot faster than standard libJSON. And you'll see that it comes with certain defaults, like automatically adding a CSS reset to your CSS, automatically setting up memory limits. So, because by default with Go, it doesn't actually limit the memory to the size of the amount of memory available in a container. It sets it up with a basic default image provider. But if you want a proper image provider, you will want to use libvips, because it's like 100 or 500 times faster than this imaging one that I have by default. The difference is libvips is Seago. So by default, I try to make everything non-Seago, right? And you'll see with auto export or with validator for the playground, and yeah, some font definitions, theme stuff, and yeah. And then in order just to run stuff, you should be able to just run air if you have air installed. You don't need to use air, because you can just do go run on the generator, and you can do go run on your main file. But I use air just because well, obviously it reduces development time by using air. I should mean we have the app running. And so if you want to run it, if you enabled the interpreter when you did Pico New, yeah, Air is really good. If you enable the interpreter with at the setup, then you do air -c, and then you give it the interpreter's air file, and when you're in interpreted mode, it will still restart the server if you change your Go code, because your Go code is compiled still. But if you change a PK file or PKCs or your asset files, it doesn't restart the server. That's the difference. So it's easier when you're doing lots of minor changes with CSS, or you're just like, getting your positioning of your HTML how you want it. It means obviously your server isn't constantly restarting, which is quite annoying. So yeah, you restart in interpreter mode. And ultimately, because of that, providing you, you can ultimately do anything you would want to do in a normal Go application, right? It's providing, especially in interpreted mode, you have to keep that code compiled. But you could call Seago or whatever it is you want to do, anything complicated. Obviously, I can't interpret Seago, but you can just keep that as part of your compiled code, and just use it as a normal application. In terms of performance, I know on my local computer, when I've had it rendering websites that I actually have built for a client, it does about 40,000 requests per second, which is quite good. It's not as fast as Temple, but Temple does a lot less stuff. But in comparison, the same website, if I was to hit it, if it was like a Nuxt or Next website on my computer, it would be like 1,000 requests per second. So it's yeah. I think it's a similar performance to HTML template. in some conditions I beat HTML template in performance, and in some conditions I'm very marginally slower than it. Um, I'm going to release some benchmarks though when I release the website, so people can see. And the main thing to be aware of is that, and there is docs in the docs folder, which hopefully explains things a lot. And when we release the website, yeah, maybe the next few days, hopefully it makes it all very clear. But the main thing is that you can do page compositions. So your pages, it's like Nuxt, where the folder structure is the actual paths. The folder structure is the actual path. So under pages, if I wanted to make a new page under a subdirectory, I could do so by just creating a new folder like test, right? And then putting a something in there. And then that would be /test/scan, if that makes sense. And that's how that's exposed. And then the partials are reusable components. And you can obviously nest partials, so partials can go into partials. And the reason why this is also really powerful is Pico has quite a lot of functionality built around its templating system, because it can also do I think it was you who posted the thing from Devon, so you might have read it. But Pico also does email templates. So you can use the same partials for emails, which I do for some of my clients. I might have a partial to render a graph and things like this, and then I can import the graph onto the page and into an email, which gets sent to the client, which gets used for the client. And one of the other features, which is a bit more young, when I say young, it's actually been around for a very long time. It's just I haven't used it as much as I should. So young is the wrong word. Immature, I guess, is a better word. But Pico can also generate PDFs through the same templating system. And the reason why this is a very important point is because it doesn't use the browser to render it, right? It doesn't use I'm trying to remember the name of all the tools, like the browser automation tools, which is how a lot of these PDF generation things work. So you can create PDFs with HTML and CSS, with the same partials. It's a bit more temperamental though with the PDFs, because I'm actually basically re-implementing the browser. But see if I can find a nice example. Invoice, how does this one look? I'm gonna need to open this in the IDE. Can I open this in the browser? Probably browser. How we want. Why can't I open this? Can I do this? So if you so in my code here, I have an example, this index.k file. So this has all of the CSS in the style. This is you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. You can put the CSS down below. It handles that. It's just I was testing I didn't want to test that flow when I was making this test. But you can see it's a normal HTML thing with the CSS all inlined, right? You don't have to inline it. You can put it in the CSS block. And then it renders it out like this. And you see in the my browser up here. So it's um there's quite a lot of logic in order to achieve this, because I'm basically recreating the browser rendering engine to do so. And the reason why I did this initially is actually a pretty funny story. Is I think I told you when you were last in here that the PKC files I actually created first, because I think it was about 4 years ago, whenever it was, or 5 years ago, I tried initially making my own video editor thing with web components, reactive little elements in the browser, so you can make videos with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And one of the main reasons why I abandoned that project was because the render times were insane. For a video, which could be like 40 minutes long, if you wanted it like 4K, 60 FPS, blah de blah de blah, it could sometimes take 6 to 8 hours to render. And the reasoning is it's pretty absurd, but I was screenshotting every single frame using browser automation tools in order to build up the video, right? And so what I tried to do instead was to basically create my own small, lightweight browser rendering system, if that makes sense. So based on Flex, because this supports things like Flex and all of this, but based on something like a Flex, I will do the I'll do the positioning to try to match what the browser's doing, basically. And it worked. It made the rendering times take, it made it go from like 6 hours to 1 hour or half an hour or something. But I just abandoned it because it didn't support everything I needed it to support for that project. But I revived it for this project for the PDF rendering system. And that's one of the things I've tried to do with this project also a lot, is to utilize the same rendering system for as many things as possible, if that makes sense. I'm seeing if there's a nicer example of a PDF. They're all got the CSS inlined. I know it's possible though, because I'm pretty sure I got tests where it's not inlined. Well, I know I'm using it in companies where it's not inlined, so I know it's possible. Yeah. And what I was doing initially in order to validate this, I don't know if I still have the tests in the project. I probably don't. But when I was first building this system, what I did is I used these browser automation tools to render a page in the browser. No, Pico. Yes and no. I was going to build this example for Tailwind, but I never finished it. I never finished it, and I might delete it because it's a bit misleading. From what I understand, you can just use Tailwind yourself, because you can just use the CLI to say, I'm going to use these, I'm going to use these classes, make this available to me. And you can create the output CSS file, which Pico can just import. And so you can use Tailwind in that regards, if that makes sense. But in terms of native integration of Tailwind, I considered it, but I'm on the fence of actually doing it. And the reasoning is because I know a lot of people like Tailwind, but I don't know if it's my place to make that integration, if that makes sense. Um, or is it something like I should facilitate the capabilities of the integration existing, and then someone else owns the integration? And the reasoning is because if I own the integration, then that means I'm responsible to keeping it maintained. And the difficulty is I don't use Tailwind myself. I always do CSS myself manually. Um, the old school way. So it's a conundrum I have. I guess if it turns out that, you know, a lot of people want it, it may be something where I prioritize it. But I'm wondering if it's something for other people, if other people were to use Pico, um, to 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 implement and for me to facilitate. I don't know. One of the other conundrums I have with Pico is I strongly suspect that for the most part the Go community doesn't want something like Pico. But the reason why I work on Pico is for two reasons. One, I enjoy it, and two, I use it. So it's you know, dog food, right? Um so it would probably be counterproductive to implement something when I don't even know if the greater Go community would even want the tool as it is. Um, but anyway, what I was going to say is what I initially did to build the my basically browser rendering flow is it's pretty funny. What I did is I created these tests with these browser automation tools, and I would render a page in the browser, and then I would use these tools to detect where every corner was, where every edge, sorry, of every element is absolutely on the page. And then I could use that. Um, I could test that against the output of my rendering system to validate that I was doing it exactly as the browser was. Because I could prove that I calculated that this thing should be absolutely here on the page, and then the browser would say it is actually here, absolutely on the page, and that's how I basically built it. So I'm gonna need to have my proper registry system. So yeah, this needs to return a on some Where did I define my... Getting back into this. I'm starting to get a bit hungry, so I'm starting to get a bit distracted. The problem I'm having. Okay, so we look it up and we return the job record. So handler's a bit misleading, but is this even... We're going to need some sort of handler object. What do I do here? Okay. So, let's, okay, look up. I'm going to look up in the registry. Is control, like, taking over? Almost got... So we're shadowing it, but I don't think it's even going to be what I call it. So that's fine. So this is going to be my actual registry. I was getting a bit lost in the source before. And that's actually what we're going to be looking up in. And the handler will be the function itself. So it would just be a function. It just returns an error. And this registry is wrong. We need to use the other registry. I think what we want to aim towards is... So we're going to need some sort of register thing we can just call, just to prove we can register stuff. So a pool. I put what did I put in the dispatcher? You had to dispatch it. See if a worker has been registered for this kind. We would be able to run the pool. And think if we need to return an error. Let's get the logger. From we're gonna need a log. So we're gonna need an hotel.go file. I'm going to have to set up all of the um, metrics and histograms and all of this so we have OTel integration. Just do all this for now. Ay, ay, ay. What it is with this control and what it's doing. It like jumps up my cursor by like 3 characters whenever I do control, and I don't know why. It's almost like I've got like another button like held in on my computer, like tab or something, I don't know. I can't do control to select text faster too. We're gonna have to restart my computer after this. So we'll create a ticker with our clock. Do I have a clock? Yes, I do. So we can have this deterministic for tests. So we're going to have to configure. I think I said a pool can have a configuration, but I didn't add it. So we'll have to be able to configure. The whole floor. So we can configure the whole frequency. And then we can record that we have so we'll do it as a notice, because notice exposes the log to the user. We want it as a notice. See how noisy that is. So there'll be the worker ID, which the pool would have to have information of. Just say 1 for now. And we would want to know. I'm going to just copy and paste stuff. I just want to copy and paste stuff. Oh, okay. Just write it out. Restarting the computer after this, I think. Strings. This will be the queues. What do I have? It's p.config.queues. Queues. Something's just going weird with the IDE. I don't know what it is. Global concurrency. Then for select. So if the context is over with, let's stop. Okay. So while the queue is running, while the pool is running, we'll need to have a way of claiming and dispatching work. Put this in the wrong place. I can't control C. What did I just do? I just deleted something, didn't I? Can't do Control V. Control Z, sorry. Yeah, put this in the wrong place, obviously. This needs to be inside of the for loop. So, the pool will need access to the store. Did I give access to store already? Yes, I did. So then we can do claim, due, context. So we need the worker ID. So, worker ID string. That gives us the ability to pass it in here. .config. Something's just weird. It's almost as if like my keyboard has a button perpetually held down. And I don't see anything. What was it doing? Worker ID. What does one? See, now when I hold down control, it doesn't do anything weird, but I don't know. So limit, that was limit. Just 10 for now. That's probably also going to be wanting to be configured from the pool configuration. So this returns rows and error. So if error equals nil, then we can warn that the batch failed. Claim due error. Claim due batch error. Claim batch failed. See, that just randomly shoots me on a new line. That's not what I pressed. Looking forward to restarting the IDE after this. If we didn't get any rows, then we didn't do anything. So we can just return. So we're going to have to go through all of this work and dispatch it. So, dispatch. But you probably want to dispatch in a background Go routine. What we probably want to do is make sure we're handling concurrency better. Because I don't just want to do this because this is unbounded. And we don't want to spin up like thousands of Go routines. So we would probably need some sort of Cephomore. And I don't know if we need some sort of worker group. But at the very least, it can't be unbounded. Because this would exhaust all your Go routines very quickly. But I don't want it to be just flat like this. Why are you unhappy? Oh, it's time duration. See, something's just weird. Something's just weird. I think I'm going to need more configuration in the pool to better handle the concurrency. Because I could have a global Cephomore. And a queue-based one. Have a think of the best way to handle it. What I should do is instead of passing in 10, I should find out how much is free, is how much is available under the global cap. So that the actual usage is predictable. And then we'd be able to call the, oh, it's not pull like that. We'd be able to ask how many free slots are available. So then it would be something like free app p.global sem lan p.global sem. So then we could have I think I'm getting a bit lost in the source, trying to think of the whole flow. And I probably just need to focus on getting something working. Let's rename this to registry handler so it's a bit more. Can't copy and paste, of course. And to make this all work together, service.go, try and get something to work. Just trying to just get the handlers to work. Um, Getting a bit tired, but just trying to get the handlers to work so something actually works, right? We're gonna need some sort of register command here, and then it'll be like kind. See, it's something is definitely just being pressed in because I don't know why that would not just autocomplete like would normally. So did I not make a like a register command? Wish I could control C, control V. Thing. I should probably put that like that. So we probably don't need to create a new runner if we're just going to test registration. So I need to create a service. Probably gonna stop fairly soon, so I'm getting quite tired. And it's annoying how I have to do right-click copy and right-click paste to do anything. So honestly, this isn't the most useful test. I think I might call it here because I'm getting quite tired. Nearly 4 a.m. But I don't know if you're still here, Alan, but I appreciate the conversation. And I'm gonna wish everyone a good night. And I think next time what I need to do is I actually need to get this working end to end with um the basic worker system flow fully in there. So we actually distribute workers nodes out on the pools. Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate it. What's your opinion so far? Have you run into any issues? I think it's one of those things where it should feel natural if you have a background in view. If you're trying to get things working with interpreted mode, there can be a bit more to do. Like you'll have to create a symbols file. And the reason is because if you've ever used Jaeger, you'd know this mindset. But it basically, the way that it works is when you interpret the Pico code, it can call your compiled Go code. And so what the symbols basically do is it allows it to access the um, compiled symbols, if that makes sense. I'll need to have lots of really good documentation on this. But an example would be um so yeah, I do bundle a VS Code extension. It's been a while since I've tried it, if I'm going to be honest with you. Um it's probably been 6 months since I last tried it. Um so the LSP is bundled into it, if I recall correctly. Because the binary is inside the VS Code extension. Trying to remember. I think I got a make command for actually just installing it into VS Code properly. Yeah, I do. So that's always what I did in the past, was make VS Code install. And I realized that the YAML I posted in there doesn't render properly. What does that make file? What does that command actually do? Yeah, the LSP is the only reason to do it. Um, so just so you know, it's not as complete as what I have for IDEA. And that's because IDEA makes it really easy to inject a language into another file, which I think I was struggling with VS Code. Um, I think you have to make sure you have Go Plus, Go PLS installed because VS Code uses that. I don't do any sort of LSP. Um, I don't do any sort of introspection inside of the script block for Golang, by the way. I allow the IDE to provide its own service for that, if that makes sense. So I do have a setup.md file in the VS Code directory. So this is under plugins VS Code setup.md. I might have a look. What's this say? Oh, really? You see, now you're making me think that I've introduced a bug because I am probably using an old version of the LSP. So what I do a lot in Pico, just so you know, is I have a library which is called Safe Disk, a package, sorry, called Safe Disk, and what it does is it um in Linux you can use, well, you can do it in Golang. It's OS root. Basically, you can make it so a process can't access files outside of a folder you've given it. And I'm quite strict with that with Pico, and it might have been that I made the LSP more secure and then didn't test it. So I'll give you a small apology on that, and I'm going to make a note of that. And I'm going to see if I can fix this tomorrow. I think it's going to be my goal to fix that tomorrow. So I'm going to add that to my issues with Eco. I've tried to I've tried my hardest to really um make everything as secure as I can. And obviously when you do that, you inevitably shoot yourself in the foot every so often. Where am I? Down here. Issues with Pico. And of course, the control jumping down changes it from a high priority thing to a low priority thing, but um no, I appreciate the it's always nice to have people doing a second pair of eyes and seeing what issues there are. Okay, well, you might see me around this time tomorrow. I don't know if I'll be working tomorrow too, but I'm planning to stream a lot next week and to try and make this a something I do quite frequently. So hopefully I'll grab you again and tell you whether or not I have fixed it all. I'm gonna see if I can get it all nicely working in VS Code too, so then you can run it yourself. And you said that, didn't you say the other day that you used an IDE called Z or something, right? So I might have to see if I know how to integrate it nicely with Z, with the LSP. What's lazy Vim? Oh, it's a NeoVim setup. Okay. So I'm probably not going to mess around with any sort of NeoVims, NeoVim things, just because those things tend to be a headache. But I've known quite a few people using Z, so I'm wondering if it's Oh look, you can click. That's interesting. You can scroll. That's fun. It's probably a good one to support. Well, anyway, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you have a really nice evening. And I'll look forward to lots of bug reports. Anyway, have a lovely evening.